So large Canadian companies will now have access to millions of dollars in new support from the federal government to keep them going through this period of dramatically low economic activity. But to qualify, businesses, well, they have to have an annual revenue of at least $300 million. They need to be over $60 million is the minimum size of the loan. So this is big stuff. There's no cap on these loans, but there are strings attached. Will this help troubled industries like airlines and the energy sector stay operational? Will it prevent more devastating layoffs like we saw last week with Air Canada? And are we headed for a massive housing crisis where so many Canadians cannot pay their mortgage? Let's find out. Joining me now is the Finance Minister, Bill Morneau. Mr. Morneau, always good to see you. Hope you and the family are well. Let's begin with the LEAF program, to the loan packages for big businesses. How will your government decide which companies actually get access to the loan? For example, airports, Air Canada, Cirque du Soleil. Who will make these decisions?
The program for large organizations is really very much part of our broader program for providing credit support for businesses small and large, really with the idea that we're going to be able to maintain employment. That's the ultimate goal, and have an economy that can be strong coming out of this. The organizations you mentioned would all be able to come to us, whether they are an airport or an airline, and they'd be able to come to us and say, look, we want to apply for this program for credit, and they need to meet some conditions, and you've heard the conditions. They're to protect taxpayers, obviously no dividends or share buybacks and limitations on executive compensation. It's to protect workers, so they've got to meet up to the standards of collective bargaining and pension rights, and to protect what we know are our long-term goals around sustainability. So climate-related disclosures are going to be important. So we've given some pretty clear conditions. They're standardized across industries.
Yeah, let me just focus on two of those. First, you said executive bonuses. How do you decide? How will the government decide what's excessive? Is the actual word that's used? What is excessive? Air Canada pays their CEO over $10 million a year. Is that acceptable?
No. So it's not a decision on what's excessive or not. It's just a decision that compensation to senior executives, including the CEO, cannot exceed $1 million a year. So it's not about bonuses versus salary. It's total compensation can't exceed $1 million a year. So that's a clear limitation we've put while the company is accepting this credit. So they will have to accept that term. And of course, that's one of the reasons they're going to want to get out of this loan.
Why give loans to companies that are using tax havens, for example? Your government wants to stamp out tax havens. There are strings attached that you've talked about, no stock buybacks, no dividends, the executive salary. Why not add another thing to sort of kill two birds with one stone? You don't want to pay tax in Canada through some tax haven. It may be legal. We don't want to do that. You can't access this loan program.
Well, let's examine this whole issue. I mean, first of all, what we've been doing for the last 5 years that I've been in this role is trying to limit the ability for firms to use any form of tax haven. So we put in place this approach to restrict ability for firms to move money around to find lower tax rates. So that's been an ongoing effort. So that's been a very good effort internationally. We've limited the ability for firms to do that. But more importantly in this program, let's just think about what's happening here. These are firms that are going to come to us because they don't actually have profits in most cases. They're actually going to be in losses. So it's not about the way that they manage their profits. And they're going to have to show us that the money is going to be put forward for Canadian investments to support their Canadian business.
Let's talk about accountability as this huge amount of money is going out. Look, debt and deficit are a big issue. The debt could top $1 trillion for the first time. The parliamentary budget officer said the best case scenario for the deficit, $252 billion, probably closer to $300 billion now. As Kevin Page, the former parliamentary budget watchdog, told me, you can't have accountability without a plan. When will you release a fiscal update so we can actually have a plan and have some accountability on all this spending?
Look, this is a really important question, Evan. I couldn't agree more that we always have to have a high level of transparency and give people information. Through the crisis, through COVID-19, we've been giving parliamentarians, but Canadians, a sense of what are the measures we're putting forth to support people, to support businesses, how much do they cost, and we're giving regular updates on that. Obviously, the overall economic situation is very fluid right now, and we're trying to figure out where it will be from an economic standpoint moving forward. We haven't set a date for an economic and fiscal update because we're looking at how we can understand that floor, understand where we're at right now. As we have a little bit more information, then we will come forward with an economic and fiscal update, as we should. But right now, I don't have a date for that because that's information that I just don't have today.
Right. Although, tell me if you have this. Does finance have a plan on, you talked about decarbonization, is finance working on a model of how many businesses could fail? Is finance working on a model of recovery? If we have 2% growth, how long will the recovery? What is the fiscal strategy as we're getting into unprecedented levels of deficits?
Well, I think the way to think about it is we are in an emergency phase right now. We've been building these programs to support Canadians, the ability to give credit to businesses through this emergency period. What we are working on, as you know, is how we start to think about that transition. So we're working on the wage subsidy extension, for example. We said that we're going to extend that. We said that we're going to be consulting to think about how we can think about the criteria so that we can move into a different and gradual approach to supporting people and businesses, but do it as we get back to work. And so we are planning all these things right now, and we're thinking about how we do that in a way that gets us back to work into a new and different normal. And that will include how we support businesses, which we've rolled out. So all of this we're working on. Of course, we recognize the need to provide more information, but we don't want to have false precision. We need to be able to say this is where we're getting to in terms of the economic situation, so that we can give some good estimates for people. It's work we're doing, Evan. We're just not ready yet to announce a date for us to move forward with that fiscal update.
Minister, there was a very stark warning about a potential housing crisis from the head of CMHC, Evan Siddall. He told parliamentarians that by September, up to 20% of mortgages could be in arrears. 20%. He called this a debt deferral cliff, right? Housing prices are falling. People can't pay. How concerned are you about that? And I mean, he's saying CMHC could be on the hook for $9 billion. This is frightening.
Well, I mean, I think that the head of CMHC is doing exactly what he should be doing in identifying the challenge in that sector. It's a really important sector to the economy. It's also really important for people who own homes or want to buy homes. So that's an important job for him to do. We're worried about every sector of the economy, and certainly the housing sector is one of them. The best way we can be supportive, though, is to make sure we're supporting people so they can get through this time. That includes mortgage deferrals so they can have cash to get through this challenge. The best way we can do it in the future is to make sure there are jobs there. The issue that is most challenging for people, obviously, in supporting their mortgage is if they don't have a job. So the large enterprise financing, which we were talking about, is about supporting employers, supporting jobs so that we can come out of this. And you're right. I mean, we have estimates that there's a broad range. You just gave the high end of his range, but there's a broad range of potential economic outcomes. Our job is to try and make sure that we're at the lower end of that range, or even better than that, because we've supported people, because we've supported businesses, and can come out of this stronger.
All right, got to leave it there, Minister. Always good to have you on the program. Thank you very much.
Evan, thanks a lot. Take care.